Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another The Soph reaction. It's been a little while since I've watched one of their videos, and now thankfully I can start watching their videos again because, well, I was waiting until I finished chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, and now that I have, I can watch their newest video, which is why RUDY is probably the knight. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest here. Out of all of the potential, like, the deer and reindeer-shaped people in the town that could be the knight, RUDY was certainly not on the list. Like, obviously, like, I had come up with my own little joke crack theory that, you know, Noelle had a split personality and the split personality was the knight. But that was before we actually saw the knight and saw the, you know, the antlers. And, you know, Mayor Holiday as well. Carol is her name, actually. And, I mean, it seems pretty strong that it's either, you know, Mayor Holiday, Carol, or Des somehow, because, granted, I could very much see it being somehow Des, because, again, the abilities of the knight seem to go way past what normal Lightners. Now, that being said, there is the real possibility that we haven't seen what an adult Lightner can do in the Dark World, since so far all we've seen are literal, like, children and teens. So, again, a lot of questions, and we're gonna have to wait at least a year to get answers for them, unfortunately. Because in Chapter 4, if you haven't seen it yet, we do get the very real possibility, hinting at the possibility that Chapter 5 will take place in Flower King Asgore's shop, and he will be the boss fight because he has like one of those black little crystal shard things that all the secret bosses have had. So weird. But yeah, it's been a while since I've watched, you know, the Soph's videos, so, you know, let's actually get into this. So, yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video, link to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because my main goal for this year is to hit 5,000 subscribers, and at the current rate I'm going, I am so close, and it's thanks to every single one of you that thinks my channel is worth subscribing to. Yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Welcome. Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 have finally been released after a 4-year-long content drought. And oh my god, my brain was literally melting on how wrong my theories were. It was also melting because the fucking knight appeared at the end of chapter 3 and started casually aura farming while curb stomping us. And after seeing this absolutely diabolical entrance, it renewed my interest in discovering the knight's true identity. And after doing a lot of research and digging, pouring through every secret scene and the game's files, I think I might just know who they are. And it's not Carol or Des. It's RUDY. Spoilers, it's RUDY. In this video, I'll be going over all the evidence for and against Carol being the knight and Des being the knight, before explaining why I think RUDY might be the knight. I'll also be presenting evidence on why the Dreamer and Holiday families are both complicit in the knight's plot, and that includes Toriel. You're not gonna wanna miss it. Now, let's get right into the video.
Come on, let's get into it then.
Before we go over the many candidates for the knight's true identity, let's go over some basic information we learn about the knight in chapters 3 and 4. Let's start with the first thing you're bound to notice about the knight, their appearance. Ignoring how similar they look to the Titans from the prophecy, and the fact that they literally have gaster hands, the most obvious and damning aspect of their appearance is their antlers. Now, I've heard some people say that they could just be wearing armor, and this might just be how their helmet is shaped, but at the beginning of the fight, the knight's body contorts and transforms in weird ways, including the supposed armor, so this is definitely not armor.
Yeah, and also the whole thing with, like, when they're with their morph in that scream, their head looks very much like a deer's skull, if you've never seen one before. Like, yeah, here's the top half of it, but, like, tell me that doesn't look like what the knight was doing when they were roaring.
At least, it's not metal armor. This is either their skin transformed by the Dark World, similar to how Chris's skin is blue in the Dark World, or they're wearing magical armor that acts as like a skin-tight suit. Regardless,
Venom.
highly doubt these antlers came from a metal helmet, which means that the knight has antlers. And there's only one family in Hometown that has antlers, the Holidays. Therefore, it's highly likely that the Roaring Knight is a member of the Holiday family, with the two most likely candidates being Noelle's mom, Carol Holiday, and Noelle's missing sister, December Holiday. These are basically the only two credible knight candidates considered by the fandom, and it does make sense since there's mountains of evidence that point to either one of them being the knight. But before we get into all that evidence, there's one more thing I want to bring up about the knight, and that's their music. During the knight's fight, this absolute banger, which you're listening to right now, will play. Now, if any of you are familiar with Toby Fox's music, then you know that he's a big fan of leitmotifs. A leitmotif is a repeated melodic phrase associated with a particular person, idea, or situation.
Oh my god, has somebody really put together a leitmotif family tree? Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up after this. Oh, that seems so funny.
Both Deltarune and Undertale's soundtracks utilize them heavily. Essentially, every major character and area in both games have their own leitmotifs, and music with their leitmotifs will play when they're on screen. Leitmotifs are also used to show a relationship between two characters. For example, Toriel's theme appears in Asgore's music since they were married, and Papyrus's theme shows up in Sans' music because they're brothers. Analyzing the knight's battle music, called Black Knife on the OST, you'll find some interesting leitmotivic discoveries. Is leitmotivic a word? Well, it's a word now.
Who cares?
For one, Black Knife sounds very similar to the songs The Chase and The Door from Chapter 1. Both of these songs are played in major scenes involving the knight or the dark worlds they create, so this makes sense. But it's not really that important to this theory. What is important is the fact that this song sounds very similar to the song Burn in Despair from Undertale. Interestingly, this song is associated with Asriel Dreamer since it plays during his boss fight. Asriel's leitmotif appearing in the knight's main theme implies that the knight was close to Asriel, no? Which can be used to narrow down the knight's identity further. Another song that I feel is referenced in Black Knife is Lost Girl. Like, maybe I've just gone insane after being exposed to 4 years worth of Deltarune brain rot, but I swear I can hear Lost Girl in this song. Like, I can't pinpoint any specific quotes of the song, but just listen to the damn thing. This song is like emanating Lost Girl from it.
I mean, maybe it's just me being not that musical. I don't hear it. Oh, actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe there was, I could recognize a little bit near the end there, actually.
I've seen some people reverse this song and claim that they can hear Lost Girl's motif in it, but I don't know about all that. What do you...
It's actually the Lost motif for Found Girl now, if you reverse it.
You think?
Maybe? I could maybe hear a little bit of something there, though I don't know whether that's me just hearing things, figuratively.
Like, to be honest, I can't really hear it. Everyone in the comment section of a video I watch comparing the two swears they can hear it, but I just can't. The melodies have similar contours, but clearly they're not the same. Anyway, based purely on vibes, I still feel like this song is connected to Lost Girl in some way, and by extension, Noelle, and also maybe Des, since the rhythm minigame implies Des wrote the melody to Lost Girl on her guitar. But regardless, if you agree that these songs sound similar, this further connects the knight to Noelle and the Holiday family. Anyway, that's all the new information we learn about the knight that's relevant to this video. Now let's get into the knight candidates.
Okay, let's go. The mayor.
Let's start with the mayor. There's a lot of evidence pointing to her being the knight. Too much evidence, in my opinion. Almost like she's a red herring, but whatever. For one, the mayor is always described as being busy, and it's like, what could she possibly be so busy with? Hometown is a small town with literally no crime. So what sorts of things is Mayor Holiday getting up to all day?
Well, I mean, if you followed an old theory, like joke theory I came up in one video, and it's that what if, like, Mayor Holiday is actually Hometown's version of Batman, where the reason she's so busy is that she, literally, during the night, she dresses up and fights crime? I mean, she's already rich. I mean, that's half the necessity for Batman right there.
Exactly. When we meet her for the first time, she comes off as cold and distant, literally lowering the temperature when she walks in the room. She also seems pretty confident in herself and has a particular disdain for Susie. The Knight comes off as cocky and condescending in their boss fight, and they also seem to have it out for Susie, so they definitely fit the mayor's character profile. Another interesting thing about the Knight is the fact that they seem to trust Chris. They might even be working with them. If the Knight defeats the Fun Gang in battle, the Knight will make Susie and Rousey swoon, but will spare Chris. Specifically, they'll go up to them and place their blade on their shoulder, almost like they're knighting Chris. Then, they'll leave and Chris will just play dead, implying Chris is working with the Knight and is trying to hide that fact. This fact is further supported by Chris's behavior during the Knight's fight. They will do far less damage than normal during the beginning stages of the fight, even less damage than Rousey, which is very unusual. It's only after a party member falls down that Chris starts doing more damage, or more likely, the damage they were always capable of doing but just chose not to. Along with Chris holding back, the Knight also seems to hold back during their fight. The Knight will never insta-kill Chris like they do Susie and Rousey after a certain amount of hits, and this combined with the fact that the Knight knew Chris opened the TV Dark World, as evidenced by the fact that Tenna claimed to have spoken to the Knight previously, proves that Chris and the Knight are working together. And you wanna know who else is not so secretly working with Chris? The Mayor. After Chris rips out their soul in Chapter 4, you can overhear them talking to someone on the phone. This mysterious caller mentions something about the next Dark World. Then, they'll warn Chris not to let Susie get to the guitar, probably because the guitar contains one of the codes to the bunker, which is where the Knight took Undyne at the end of Chapter 3.
Which the code is most likely 1225, which is, December 25th. Which, I mean, I know, the holidays are very Christmas themed, but I mean, that's like somebody having their password being 1234.
They mention some stuff about Chris's soul, the red soul, and then the caller mentions that the next Dark World is gonna be opened in the church. So the person on the line is either the Knight or they're working for the Knight. And this caller is heavily implied to be Carol because after Susie gets the guitar, the caller says they'll be right over. And sure enough, moments later, the mayor shows up, even though Noelle said she would be working late. So this confirms that Carol is either the Knight or knows who the Knight is, since she has a say in where the next Dark World will be opened. This also confirms that Chris is working for the mayor, just like they're working for the Knight. At the end of Chapter 4, the mayor even reminds Chris that they promised to do something for her. So clearly they have some sort of agreement worked out between each other. Perhaps the most obvious piece of evidence that Carol is the Knight is the giant-ass katana displayed in her kitchen. Guess this is how middle-aged suburban women keep themselves entertained these days?
I mean, you never know. I mean, again, knowing Deltarune's logic, I mean, Noelle does say that she specifically has that to cut through her dad's fruit cake, which is apparently very dense. But you'd think if that was the case, you'd want something with a bit more heft. So you'd want maybe like a European broadsword or something. I don't think a katana has that much weight. Like, you'd have to put more force behind it, and that seems like it would actually damage the cake more.
But this katana looks strikingly similar to the weapon used by the Knight.
So.
The hilt of the blade looks almost identical to the hilt of the blade used by the Knight.
Well, I mean, and it's the whole thing, and Chris's sword is a pencil in the light world. Who's to say, even if it's not the exact same shape, a sword just doesn't stay a sword. I mean, granted, there is the whole thing where, when the Knight summons it, its shape kind of looks like a bat, or very something similar, but given the general sort of, almost fantasy-like shape of the sword, I could very much see that that's what the sword looks like when it's facing you directly as opposed to being held along its side or something.
And one of the Knight's attacks involves shooting bullets that look like snowflakes, and as I mentioned earlier, the mayor is heavily associated with the cold. The hand she puts on Chris's shoulder feels cold. The temperature of the room seems to get colder when she enters. And at work, she likes the AC on full blast. So it's really starting to stack up here, and things are not looking too good for Mayor Holiday. But a question you may be asking is why the mayor would want to be the Knight in the first place. And it's really quite simple. She's looking for her missing daughter, Des. Many people believe that Des is stuck in another plane of reality, like the depths, which is a theoretical plane of existence where all darkness originates from.
I mean, yeah, again, there is the hidden text in the code, And I really have to wonder, like, so seemingly we did get more of that text with chapters 3 and 4, like, so I really have to wonder, like, what is going to happen with that? Are we going to reach, like, an actual conclusion, or is that just going to be one of those things that just gets thrown to the side, or is just there for theory fodder?
People also believe that Des is the person speaking in the unused text.
Oh, yeah, right there. That's the one I was talking about.
So maybe the knight, aka the mayor, is opening Dark Worlds not to cause the roaring, but to try and find her daughter. It's certainly possible. Well, I shouldn't say it's possible. It's 100% confirmed that the mayor is actively searching for Des. How do I know this? Because she has a freaking conspiracy board in her bedroom, like you'd see in a movie. Clearly, this board is related to Des in some way, and this isn't like an unused sprite or anything. You can actually see the inside of Carol and Rudy's room through the vents, and you can even see a secret scene with Asgore where he vaguely alludes to Des's disappearance when he's looking at the conspiracy board. But
honestly, that's one of those things. I didn't realize what I was looking at when I first saw this in game. I thought for some reason that was like a mirror or a cupboard or something. I didn't really register what Asgore was even standing in front of.
I'll talk about that scene later. Regardless, clearly, the mayor is very motivated and obsessed with finding her daughter. Understandably so. Also, another very interesting thing about this room. You can't really see this very well in the game itself, but if you look into the game's files and see the sprite for this room, you'll see a katana with a black blade sitting by the mayor's bed. You know, a black blade? Like the thing the knight gives us if we beat it? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Totally not
I
the
didn't
knight's
know
weapon,
that.
by the way. Anyway, that's the Carol Knight theory in a nutshell. Seems pretty cut and dry, right? Sure, but if I'm being honest, I don't really think Carol's the knight. Call it a hunch, but something tells me the mayor is just a red herring. Just like how Chris was a red herring in chapter 2. And look, fool me once, shame on you. But fool me twice, shame on me. I see right through Toby's little charades, and although I can't exactly prove the mayor isn't the knight, I feel like there are much better candidates to consider. So, what about this? Could she be the knight? Absolutely. First of all, take a look at the knight's weapon.
Yeah,
What does it
it does
remind
kind
you
of look like a
Me
bat.
personally, it reminds me of a baseball bat. And we know how much Des likes baseball. She even hit Chris with a wiffle bat once. And the knight certainly looks like they're about to hold their weapon like a baseball bat in this animation before switching to gripping it like a normal sword. And yes, I know from other angles this weapon looks like a sword, but we all know Dark Worlds can transform items, so maybe the Dark World just transformed Des's bat into a sword, kinda like how Chris's pencil transforms into a sword. This connect.
But at the same time, like, apart from the, like, even if that were the case, like, whenever you summon or bring out the items, they never, like, appear as their original item and then transform into a sword. They're always just, you know, the sword itself. So again, like, it really does go into the whole thing that the knight is not a normal lightener going into the Dark World. There's something weird going on with them.
Connection seems even stronger if you analyze the lyrics to Raise Up Your Bats. Just as a refresher, Raise Up Your Bats is the song that plays during Chapter 3's rhythm minigame. It's the one where Rousey changes all the lyrics on the fly, and just listen to the original lyrics of this song. When the demon heart is crying, and the blood is gushing bright, raise up your bat for the burning fight. When your hope is slowly dying, and your future's lost its rights, raise up your bat and face the fright, knock 'em dead into the night. Like bro, this literally sounds like Des explaining her motivation for raising up her bat and becoming the knight. And the fact that we're raising up a bat is like way too specific. Clearly this has something to do with Des and baseball bats. And just listen to the chorus. Come follow me into the dark, with your heart as the arc, which shall shine you the way, because I'm with you in the dark, with your heart as my mark, which shall guide you the way through the waves. Ignoring the don't forget reference, does this not literally sound like Des talking to Chris? Like, I have no proof of this, but I strongly suspect this is an in-universe song written by Des, and she's definitely talking to Chris in this song, especially since it talks a lot about hearts, clearly referencing Chris's soul, so it kinda sounds like Des is encouraging Chris to do something, possibly related to creating Dark Worlds, and I guess also fighting. I admit I don't know her exact motives for becoming the knight or why she would want Chris to help her, but I don't think anyone will truly know until the next chapter is released. Like, there just isn't enough information to really glean her motive. But I feel like this baseball connection is strong. Speaking of baseballs, maybe I'm just tripping, but doesn't the ball the knight transforms into kind of look like a baseball?
Yeah, it very much does. Until we get more proof or I hear like a convincing like theory, I'm kind of like, I'm sticking in the middle of the road that it could be either either like Carol or Noel or Des. I'm getting all their names mixed up today. What's going on with me? But again, I'm waiting because like this video is supposed to be about, you know, Rudy being the knight, and I want to see what proof or theories you have that, you know, talks about Rudy being the knight. I'm on the edge of my seat here, so.
Am I the only one who sees this? Another piece of evidence pointing towards Des being the knight is the fact that the knight is left-handed. Just look at all of their animations. They almost exclusively swing their sword with their left hand. And do you want to know who else is left-handed? Des. If you look at Des's desk, you'll see that her mouse is on the left side of the computer, clearly indicating she's left-handed. Then there's all of the leitmotifs and the knight's theme that points towards Des. There's of course the superficial similarities between the track and Lost Girl, which might actually be Des's theme, not Noelle's, but that's up for debate. But the most interesting musical connection is the fact that one of Azriel's songs seems to have been the foundation that The Black Knight was written on. Why does this song sound so similar to Burn in Despair? Well, like I said, it's probably because the knight had a close personal relationship with Azriel. And since Des used to be friends with Chris and Azriel, this makes sense. Especially since Azriel was around the same age as Des, so they were likely the closest. Des may have even been in love with Azriel for all we know, but I'll stay away.
Desriel, I see it. I've seen so much. I joked about it in my Discord server, but there was specifically a point where I said, now that all the theorizing on Twitter has calmed down, the algorithm has left me with nothing but the shipping. Because honestly, like, because I know, you know, for, you know, a good couple of weeks there, like, Twitter was just absolutely overrun with all the theorizing and spoilers and stuff like that. And then that died down, and all that I was left with was the Desriel, the Chris Cruzy, whatever it is, like, all the ship names just hashtagged. Ugh. I mean, granted, some of those pictures were adorable.
From fanfiction territory for this video. The last piece of evidence that points towards Des being the knight is the inspiration for the knight character. Basically, Toby Fox is a huge fan of the Mother series, and the knight is clearly inspired by an antagonist called the Masked Man from Mother 3. I'm about to spoil a huge part of Mother 3's plot, so if you don't want to hear that, I recommend you skip to this timestamp right now. Okay, so basically, for those of you who don't know, the main character of Mother 3 is a kid named Lucas, and Lucas had a brother named Klaus who ran away to get revenge on the animal that killed his mom. He ended up going missing for several years and no one knew where he was. Well, it turns out he died, and the main villain's army revived him and turned him into the Masked Man, who is a major antagonist for Lucas. He, along with Lucas, are the only two people able to pull the 7 needles, and basically, the short of it is if an evil person pulls all of the 7 needles, then it'll cause the end of the world. So are we seeing the similarities between the Masked Man and the Knight? Both are masked or unidentifiable individuals who either poke things or pull things from the earth in order to cause the end of the world. And assuming the Knight is Des, they are both the missing and presumed dead siblings of one of the main characters. So, like, depending on how heavily Mother 3 influenced the Knight's character, Des might be the Knight purely based on that. That's basically all the evidence pointing towards Des being the Knight. And I have to say, out of the two candidates, the Mayor and Des, I like Des better because, like, I just strongly suspect the Mayor is just a red herring, whereas Des is actually a serious candidate. Although there are a few parts of this theory that, like, don't really make a lot of sense to me. For one, isn't Des supposed to be trapped in the game's code, or I guess the depths or whatever?
I mean, I forget who I was watching, but somebody did point out that, you know, this could be, you know, like what happened when Des was initially trapped, and then over the years, she, like, found a way to escape, and then eventually became the Knight over, you know, somehow. Who's to say that, you know, all this text that we're reading is contemporary?
I mean, come on, who else would the person in the game's code be, other than Des? She's the only person established to be missing. Now, of course, it's always possible that the conversation Des has with herself in the code happened in the past, and she's since escaped the code and became the Knight. Except if you read the text a little closer, it kind of implies that she's currently stuck in the code, like as we speak. I'm gonna read chapter 4's unused text to show what I mean. I'm starting to lose track of time. Has it been days? Hours? If someone told me it's been years, I might believe them. Before, the sun came up, and so many wonderful things happened that made time meaningful. Things like breakfast, or late night TV. In this place, I don't eat or drink anymore. I can't tell if I'm awake or dreaming. I can't even tell if I'm dead or alive, and it's just nothing but pitch black silence, except for this noise, the scratching noise I sometimes hear. This sounds crazy, but even though no one can hear me, when I hear that noise, I feel like someone's listening. Anyone, if you're there, thank you. So she's directly talking to us, the people looking through the game's code and reading the message right now. I guess the scratching noise is somehow caused by us. I guess by looking through the game's code, basically the fabric of its reality.
Yeah.
This kind of implies that Des is trapped in the code right now as we speak, so can she really be the knight? Also, if Des is the knight, this kind of muddies up the motivation of the mayor substantially, since it seems like the mayor is desperately trying to find her daughter, but at the same time is working for the knight to open up dark worlds in order to search for Des. And it's like if Des is the knight, then she already found Des. She doesn't need to do all this. So that would mean she's opening dark worlds for another reason. That, or she somehow doesn't know the knight is her daughter, maybe. But then, like, why is Des doing this? And why is she tricking her parents? I don't know. Feels a little confusing. I definitely think Death's Knight has the most amount of evidence, but it adds a layer of complexity to the story. And unless you add a bunch of extra context and explanation that we're not privy to, it kind of doesn't make a ton of sense. So I guess Carol Knight makes more sense, but like I said, I don't think the mayor is a very satisfying option. So what are we left with here? Well, there is one holiday we have yet to consider. And it's not Noel because, like, the knight is way too big to be Noel. It's Rudy. Couldn't he be the knight? Rudy would have, like, the same motivations to open up dark worlds as his wife, to find Des, and pretty much every bit of evidence that implicates Caro also implicates him, like the black katana on the foot of his bed. Again, totally not the knight's weapon, by the way. And is Rudy really just a sick, dying man? Or is there more to him? Could he have a dark side that he hides behind his friendliness and his illness? I admit I latched onto the Rudy is the knight theory on my first playthrough, purely based on vibes, but through the power of confirmation bias, I have found quite a few hints that point to old Rootster being more than he seems.
Through the power of confirmation bias. Okay. God, okay, honestly, what is your proof? Because, like, I mean, okay, thinking about it, I could potentially see this as, you know, Rudy actually is sick, but being the knight is taking a toll on his body. That's why he's so sick. Because as I said once before, the knight has a lot of abilities and just that we haven't seen other, like, Lightners have in the Dark World. So if he has, like, he was somehow given, like, this powered up form and is using it to try to find his daughter or whatever, it could also be one of those things where it's just too powerful for him and it's messing him up. I mean, there was that whole thing in Chapter 4 where, you know, we're on the weird route and the normal route. The phone call that Chris gets at the end of Chapter 4 is different, with different text boxes. And the whole thing is that whenever we've heard, like, phone calls where it's like we hear bits and pieces, we only hear words, maybe that's literally just Rudy being tired and not being able to say entire sentences.
The first thing is his illness. At first, it seems like Rudy is completely bedbound, making it impossible for him to be the knight, except we see in Chapter 4 that Bro can definitely walk. And besides, the knight, like, floats the entire time anyway, so, like, it wouldn't even matter if he can walk or not, he could still definitely fight. Obviously, he would get tired, which might explain why the knight kind of ended the battle a bit early, but regardless, I think Rudy is more physically capable than he appears to be. A thing that I always wondered about Rudy is what exactly is causing his illness? I mean, I guess he could just have cancer, but what if the magical powers he wields as a knight is making him sick?
Yeah, what did I say?
This seems like a baseless claim, but there is some evidence that the knight's powers can make people sick. Case in point, Chris. They get physically ill during the knight's boss fight, and this can't just be nervousness. I mean, just read these descriptions. You felt lightheaded, your vision narrows, your chest feels tight, you felt your chest twisting, you felt a migraine coming on, your heartbeat becomes twisted. Like, bro needs life alert.
What does that even mean?
The textbook symptoms of a heart attack. And what's interesting is the fact that the knight notices that Chris is getting sick and reacts to it. Chris coughed. The knight slowly tilts its head. So the knight is getting concerned when Chris starts coughing, which is very interesting because coughing is the main symptom of Rudy's illness.
Okay. I mean, again, everybody's been kind of thinking of that as, you know, the whole thing of, like, Chris coughing is like, hey, we need to get this over with. But Chris was actually getting sick. But why would it only be Chris? Like, why would, like, there's another Lightner here in Susie. Why wouldn't she be affected as well?
So it's almost like the Knight cares about Chris and doesn't want him to get sick like he is. Now, this line does appear later in the fight, so it's always possible that this is just Chris's way of signaling to the Knight like, hey, you're getting washed here, can we maybe wrap things up? But
Yeah,
I don't know.
definitely,
I feel like
yeah.
both interpretations are valid, so I'm just gonna go with the interpretation that helps my theory. Now, another interesting detail about the Knight's fight is the fact that Chris can hold their breath to make their soul go faster. Now, why would holding your breath, of all things, give Chris an advantage in the fight? What's the relevance? Well, this could be because Rudy is always out of breath. He's always having these like coughing fits, like his illness is in his lungs. And speaking of lungs, what's going on with the Knight's lungs? Because when they power up for the first time, their body contorts in these weird shapes, especially the chest area. Just look how distorted it looks. But when the Knight does its final attack, look at its chest. It has this weird spiral thing in it. Like, what in the world could this be? My theory is that this spiral is the source of the Knight's power. And since the source of the Knight's power is in its chest, maybe that's why Rudy is so sick and why his health problems are related to his chest. I don't know, maybe this is just me tripping. Maybe I'm onto literally nothing. But I strongly feel like Rudy is the best candidate for being the Knight. I mean, can you imagine how shocking that would be? The intrigue, the drama if Rudy was the Knight? I know, it's hard to believe that a nice guy like Rudy would be the Knight, especially when the Knight is so arrogant in their fight and seems to have a very antagonistic relationship with Susie, since Rudy seems to like Susie, but I don't know. He did threaten to kick her ass that one time, so who knows? Maybe the Knight is like his bad boy alter ego or some shit. Either way, I feel like narratively, Rudy makes the most amount of sense to be the Knight, because otherwise he's pretty much a nothing character. Like, I guess he's sick and Noelle's dad and also might die later, but I don't know. Whenever I make a video on why such and such person is the Knight, I always ask myself, does this person's character improve if they're the Knight? Do they become more interesting and compelling if they're the Knight? And I feel like with Rudy, that's a hard yes. You know, I should probably say that even if Rudy is the Knight, that doesn't mean Carol is innocent. As Chris's phone call proves, she's heavily involved in the decision making on where the Knight opens each Dark World. And of course, the desk conspiracy board is in his freaking bedroom. So yeah, if Rudy is the Knight, he's definitely closely working with his wife. He's basically the bronze of the operation and Carol is the brains. Now, there's one last thing I want to bring up with this whole Rudy Knight thing, and that's the timeline. The timeline of events lines up perfectly if Rudy is the Knight, and let me explain. We see in Tenna's flashback the exact order that people stop showing up at the Dreamer household. And this is like a rough timeline on like which relationship deteriorated first and which order did they happen in. And we see that people left in this order: Des, Carol, Asgore, Noelle, Rudy, and Azrael. I find it really odd that Rudy held out for so long, like even longer than fucking Asgore. And the reason I bring this up is because it's really strange that Des has been missing for so long, yet the Knight is only taking steps to find her now. Like, the game's dialogue clearly indicates that these Dark Worlds are recent, so it's like, why is the Knight only taking steps now?
Oh, and then you have the whole, okay, so it could be the fact, you know, they're rushing now because they know they might not have a lot of time left since they're sick. Okay, I could see it.
Well, if Rudy is the Knight, maybe he was like resisting his wife's demands to become the Knight for a long time and only gave in recently. I know some of you are saying, but the flashback shows Rudy leaving when Chris was a little kid, so it couldn't have been recent. But come on, the flashback shows Azrael leaving home when Chris was a little kid, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because the dialogue clearly indicates that Azrael recently left to go off to college. And if he left when Chris was a little kid, wouldn't he have graduated by now? So yeah, I don't think that we can take this flashback super literally. I think it just shows the general order that people left. But of course, any number of years could have taken place between each disappearance. So Rudy leaving could still be a semi-recent development. Obviously, it wouldn't have happened immediately before Chapter 1, since he would still have to be the Knight for long enough to get sick. But maybe he was opening Dark Worlds off screen prior to Chapter 1, only to put his plan into full effect now. I admit this argument is a bit of a stretch, but I thought I would point it out. That's basically my theory on why Rudy is the knight, and there are a few holes in this theory, like how the knight's song references one of Azriel's songs, implying that the knight was close to Azriel, which isn't necessarily true of Rudy. Like, yes, Rudy was friends with Azriel's parents and spent a lot of time with him in like a group setting, but I don't see any evidence of them having a very strong one-on-one relationship. I guess the motif in Burn in Despair could just be used to represent a situation or a feeling rather than a specific person, but I admit that this part of the theory is a bit weak. Another problem with the theory is the fact that the knight opened the Dark World in the same room as Noelle, and it's pretty inconceivable to me that Rudy would endanger his daughter like that, especially when he's so protective of her.
Yeah, and it would also be a little weird that, again, like, there is the whole idea that the knight created the Dark World without them seeing, but, like, you'd think Noelle would potentially notice, her dad being out of the hospital. Since, him being out of the hospital to go to church was such a big deal.
I mean, I guess you could make the same argument for the mayor and Des. Like, why would the mayor want to endanger her daughter like that? I mean, she is a strict parent, but it seems like she still cares about Noelle. And why on earth would Des want to hurt Noelle when Des has been shown to be very protective of her in the past? So perhaps this means that Noelle and Birdley entered the computer lab after the Dark World was created, meaning the knight had no idea Noelle was gonna fall in. But I don't know, I feel like their position in the room implies that they were already in the computer lab when the Dark World was created.
Exactly,
so maybe
what
this
I
is just a
said
plot
before.
hole, or there's something I'm not seeing. I don't know. At this point, I want to point out that it doesn't necessarily matter if Carol or Rudy is the knight, since everyone is complicit in the knight scheme. And by everyone, I don't just mean the holidays. I mean both the holiday and Dreamer families are involved. Apart from maybe Noelle and possibly Azriel, but that's to be determined. Now, I think the evidence that Chris is involved in this scheme is pretty clear-cut, but I will admit that the evidence against Toriel and Asgore is a lot weaker, but it's still there. So let's start with Asgore. He definitely knows more than he lets on. In chapter 4, when you're like in the vents of Noelle's house, you can actually get a secret scene with Asgore if you go to the bathroom. Yes, you do have to watch him piss to get it, and yes, it is as creepy and voyeuristic as it sounds, but if you watch him in the bathroom, he'll eventually start talking to himself about something. Dum-de-dum. Phew, cleaning up sure works up an appetite. I wonder if the kitchen has any meals for me. No, not now. I can't afford to take a break. Now, more than ever, I need to concentrate, to settle this once and for all. I've got to go look again. After that, he leaves to go look at the conspiracy board in Carol and Rudy's room. You can follow him into that room and he talks to himself some more. We're almost there, aren't we, old friend? This time for sure, Tori will finally see what really happened, that I just wanted to protect everyone, and this time, she'll have to believe me. They all will. Then, we'll all be a happy family again, won't we? It sure is beautiful, isn't it? This black shard? Like, bro, what? He's literally talking about the fucking black shard the knight gives us. This means he's absolutely in cahoots with the knight, no? And bro, what is Unk planning? Is he deadass gonna open a Dark World with that katana? And we all know what Asgore is capable of when he's pushed into a corner, so frankly, I'm afraid for everyone's safety. But sorry, let me get back on topic. Not only does it seem like Asgore feels indebted to the mayor and is actively searching for Des, but he literally mentions the knight's weapon. There's no way he doesn't know about the holiday's plot to—
I mean, I could see the whole reason he feels indebted purely being because, the mayor is actually giving him paying work and helping him cover his bills when his flower shop is kind of floundering.
Open more Dark Worlds to find Des. He absolutely has to know. Now let's move on to Toriel. I just want to preface this by saying that most of the evidence for this theory comes from the game's code as opposed to anything you can encounter playing normally. You could even argue that some of this is unused content, and I know some people don't consider that stuff canon, but it is in the code and I'm gonna talk about it. And Toby does like leaving clues in his code to add more lore to the story anyway. So yeah, here's the evidence that Toriel might know more than she lets on. Shout out to JuiceCube on YouTube for making this discovery. I'll link their video in the description below, but basically, in the map for the Ice Palace level in the secret NES game, most of the mobs in there have their own placeholder sprites in the level editor. The placeholder for the little hooded Ice Mage is a deer, and the Ice Mage is also called a deer in the files, so this is clearly Noelle, but along with there being like this normal looking brown deer, there's also a black deer placeholder sprite, and it's used in that room with the little little weird black monster that mirrors her movements. The placeholder for this sprite is called sprite_board_deer_black. So like, can we all agree that this is totally Des? Like, the brown counterpart is clearly Noelle, so wouldn't the black counterpart be Des? Anyway, if you analyze the code for the black deer placeholder, you'll see that this placeholder has a lot of weird properties and characteristics to it. It's definitely
Like
not
what?
normal for a placeholder sprite. Like with the brown deer, it's just a regular placeholder. There isn't anything interesting with it. But with the black deer, there's a lot of interesting properties and extra code that doesn't seem to do anything. For one, when the black deer spawns, the code initializes a variable called torial and sets it to true. This torial variable seems to control whether or not the black deer is replaced with the black monster in the game. Basically, it checks if the torial variable is true, and if it is, it will replace the black deer sprite with the black monster sprite.
So wait, does that mean there might be a way of having the torial be torial variant? What does that even?
If you get rid of this line or you set the torial variable to false, then the black deer will spawn in place of the black monster. And this black deer has walking animations for it, which is weird since the sprite seems to be unused. So it kind of feels like Toby wanted people to find this. And this is just like so incredibly weird. Like, why is the variable called torial, and why does a variable need to exist that determines if the black deer is replaced with the black monster? Like, there's no situation where the black deer would be in place of the black monster, so why add all of this extra code that does nothing? Why not just change the black deer to the black monster unconditionally? Like the code changes the brown deer into Noelle unconditionally. Like, clearly Toby wanted us to find this variable called torial and was, I guess, trying to hint towards something. And the only thing I could guess that he's trying to hint towards is that maybe torial isn't being completely honest with her children about Des's disappearance, hence why the torial variable needs to be set to true in order to hide Des's sprite and replace it with the black monster.
So, granted, I know, sometimes delving into the code can get really meta in Toby Fox games. But that just doesn't seem right to me. That seems like just a little too opaque if that was the case. Honestly, Toby, what are you doing? What have you done to us?
So I guess she's hiding something about Des? And the question is, what is she hiding and why is she hiding it? From the short interaction Toriel has with Rudy, it seems like her and the mayor don't like each other. Like, she won't even call the mayor by her name. So I don't necessarily think she's deeply involved in the Knight's plot to find Des, but I do think she's probably aware of it, hence why she doesn't like the mayor that much. Editing me here. One thing I forgot to mention is the fact that there's evidence Toriel is rooting for the Knight. If the Knight defeats you in battle and you check Toriel, the narration will say she's sleeping peacefully. But if you beat the Knight in battle, the narration will say her face is contorted. It looks like she's having a nightmare. I just find that really interesting. Do with that information what you will.
Wait, I thought the nightmare thing only appeared if you had the black mantle. Or the shadow mantle. I assumed that if you beat the Knight, without the shadow mantle, it would have still said that she's having a nice dream.
But I think it makes her look pretty sus. Anyway, let's get back to the video. But regardless, clearly all of the adults in these families are either directly complicit in the Knight's plan or are aware of it and aren't doing anything to stop it. And now they've wrapped in poor Chris. Like, I genuinely feel bad for them. I don't think there's a single adult truly looking out for their best interests. Like, why on earth would you involve a child in your psychotic evil plan? Like, drop some prayer emojis in the comments for Chris, because I don't know. There's a lot of bad parenting going on in this game. This is the end of the video, but if you enjoyed it.
God, honestly, the whole thing, like, the idea. Again, I like the idea that there could be, like, this massive surprise, like, again, like with how Chapter 3 and 4 just seemingly smashed so many theories. Like, the idea that, in a future chapter, that more theories get absolutely smashed by, like, the Knight being the sick dad, Rudy. But honestly, and while I could see the whole thing with, with whatever powers being whatever is making him sick, again, it doesn't, like, why is he doing it? Unless, you know, the whole thing is he's working with, you know, his wife to find Des, and he's finally given in after so time because, you know, he's dying. I don't know. I really don't know. This is definitely going to be one of those theories that you put it on the shelf and kind of look at and kind of like, it's so weird, but could it be true? Who knows? Until, you know, we actually get the proof. Oh, God. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.